we all love slow motion footage. And it doesn't take much imagination to understand why. It's beautiful. As a cinematographer, when I'm brought onto a production, I'm often asked, can we shoot slow motion? The obvious answer is yes. But why do you like slow motion so much? This is actually a variation of what I ask clients when they ask for slow motion footage. Basically, my answer is yes. But why are we using it? Cinematography is always about answering this question, why? Because motivation determines intentional use of the tools and resources that we have available to us. I believe cinematography is a balance between what is visually familiar and what is visually surprising. If you set up nothing but a series of shots that look like standard life, you'll get bored. On the flip side, if you compose a video with nothing but visually surprising, weird, wild images, you can overstimulate and undermine the uniqueness of the shots. What I'm getting at is that slow motion is interesting because it's surprising. This is why I like to be strategic about how I'm using slow motion footage. Not that I think there's anything wrong with capturing footage that doesn't have a specific plan on which footage you're going to use. Realistically, if the budget's there and the client wants it, I'm happy to capture most things in slow motion just so we have the option. But I do believe there are reasons to use slow motion and reasons not to use slow motion. As a cinematographer and producer, I have to think about what we're capturing in this way. Because, functionally speaking, slow motion is expensive to capture. I consider it like this. If my bitrate is 4K ProRes footage and 300 megabits a second, when I'm shooting 24 frames per second, then switching to slow motion will increase my data consumption 2.5 times. On an 8-hour production day, that means going through more media and then having to store that data in post. That itself at least warrants the question, why are we shooting in slow motion? Here are some reasons I believe you should shoot in slow motion. 1, to symbolize the pace of life slowing down. This could be a positive thing, helping people to connect with a product that will put their hectic life at ease. Or it can create tension, making us feel unsettled or foreshadowing a troubling moment. 2, to emphasize action. By moving from normal or faster than normal action into slow motion through a process called speed ramping, you can build a rhythm that wouldn't otherwise be present, and you can draw more attention to specific moments. 3, nostalgia. Slow motion footage has an emotional weight to it because it resembles the way our minds play back memories. I don't mean in some true neurological way, but slow motion gives us a chance to focus in on key features or the way an object or a person moves towards something. This is part of the reason that films have historically used slow motion to visually represent memories. 4, drama. I hesitate putting this one into its own category because it sort of feels like it fits in with everything I've already said, but there is value in identifying when a project needs to be dramatic and realizing that slow motion footage is going to be a part of that strategy. All right, so everything I've discussed so far is focused on the production value of slow motion footage. But for independent producers who are essentially doing everything themselves, including the edit, I'd like to talk for a moment about how to work with slow motion inside of editing software. I'll try to go over the basics here in case you're new to editing with slow-mo and need all of those first steps to proceed. Let me start with some definition. Slow motion is technically one part of the processing procedure with footage that's overcranked. This term refers to the physical rotation increase of a film reel as film is exposed. By overcranking the film, you're exposing more frames per second of captured footage. So when you're talking about frames per second, or FPS, there's another reference to the action of film being exposed. If you speed up the motor on a film camera 2.5 times the normal rate, you'll be exposing 60 frames for every 1 second of footage. That's 60 FPS, or frames per second. But overcranked footage isn't always just used for slow motion. Broadcast shoots, for instance, deliver at 30 frames per second. And soap operas have historically used 50 or 60 frames to imitate the processing rate of the human eye. Sports and video games will often use high frame rate capture to get more details in action. Even The Hobbit used a high frame rate technique and delivered special screenings at 48 frames per second, which is double the standard. To achieve slow motion, you have to take the overcranked footage and replay in a 24p timeline, which would process the first 24 frames in 1 second, the next 24 in another second, and the last 12 frames in half a second. That slows your normal motion down to 40% of normal motion. Practically, here's what it looks like. In Premiere, take your slow motion footage, drop it in your 24p timeline, and make sure to keep the sequence settings the same. Then right-click on the clip, select Speed Duration, and type 40 into the speed percent. Alternatively, you can conform your footage to a new frame rate by right-clicking on your footage in the project window. Go to Modify and select Interpret Footage. Then change the Assume This Frame Rate to 23976, or you can just round up to 24. Then drop it into your timeline and it'll already be set to slow motion playback. The advantage of this is you can see your footage in slow motion if you're using your source window to make your selections from a longer clip. Inside of Final Cut, drop your footage into the project, select the clip, hit Ctrl-Option-R, and set your frame rate to 40%. Inside of DaVinci, drop your footage into your 24p timeline, right-click and select Change Clip Speed, then type 40% into speed. Just a note, this will keep the clip length the same, which will make it look like you've lost part of your clip. All you have to do is drag out the end of the clip, and you'll see the whole clip is still there. Well, that covers some of the basics of slow motion as I see it. Hopefully you feel equipped and ready to know why and how to use slow motion in your project or work. If you haven't liked this video yet, and if you found it helpful, please give it a like. That'll help me as I plan out more content in the future. Do you have an answer to the question, why shoot slow-mo, that I didn't cover? Share it in the comments so we can add that to the list of great reasons to shoot in slow-mo. Do you have any questions or need to troubleshoot a problem you're having with editing slow motion footage? Let me know in the comments. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell to keep up to date with future content. All right, let's get shooting.